Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. We are in deep trouble in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is in a serious economic and political mess because we have been stuck with a corrupt, incompetent, tyrannical ZANU-PF dictatorship for the last 43 years and counting. ZANU-PF has rigged elections to enable the party to stay in power. That is the problem. We have had many golden opportunities to end this ZANU-PF dictatorship. And the best chance, without any doubt, was during the 2008 to 2013 Government of National Unity. The primary purpose of the GNU was to implement the democratic reforms that would have stopped the ZANU-PF rigging elections. Alas, not even one meaningful democratic reform was implemented, and hence why we are here. Ever since the GNU failure, MDC and Triple C, who were given the task of implementing the democratic reforms, have since completely abandoned the reforms in pursuit of winning the elections, winning rigged elections, claiming they've got strategies to win rigged elections. They participated in 2018 and they lost. And people thought, well, maybe they've learned the lesson. But lo and behold, no. They were back participating again in 2018. And again, they lost. The party is now dragging the nation into the third election since the GNU 2023. And guess what? They claim they're going to win big. And in a rare moment, Nelson Chamisa has actually given a statement, a more full statement rather than the usual tweets about the coming elections. And when you go through it, you really despair. You realize why we are in this problem. Let me take you through it. Those of you who have got the opportunity, you can read the full statement for yourself. It's available in Bulawayo 24. The statement starts by making the following claim, as can be seen by the headline there. A new Zimbabwe is possible. In a few months, Zimbabweans head to the polls to decide their future. There have been many elections before, all of which have not brought the change we desire. So I understand why, for many of our people, voting may seem like a futile exercise. However, history tells us that nothing lasts forever. This is interesting. So are we going to these elections hoping that this time round we'll win just because history tells us nothing lasts forever? This is really a foolish argument. The reason why there's not been any meaningful change is because ANOPF has been rigging elections. Fix the problems. Stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. Implement the democratic reforms. And then you can expect meaningful change. What is the point of participating in a process that is so flawed that in 2008, MDC won 73%, but that was not good enough to deliver them the keys to State House. Everybody said we need to implement reforms. And it was MDC who failed to implement any meaningful reforms. Now they're telling us that our history will be working on our side. We are just repeating the same mistake over and over again, expecting a different result. This is insanity. I'll go back to the article, and I quote: "We have reasons to be confident that this is a special year, one in which millions of our people will cast liberation vote, a freedom vote, and a restoration vote. The odds are stacked against us, yet moving around the country and speaking to people across all sectors of society, I'm encouraged by their resolve to make sure that this will be the year of our national rebirth. Since we announced our new movement in January 24th, 2022, it has grown beyond all expectation. Ours is a citizen movement that draws on glorious history of the liberation struggle and those that came before before us, or forebears. This is not offering any rational reason why we should go into the elections without reforms. The party was launched in January last year, this Triple C, and it is not for me to comment whether it has grown or not. But the issue of free, fair, and credible election cannot be a matter of we have got a bigger opposition. That's not enough. We need free, fair, and credible election to have a meaningful election. To participate in a flawed election process on the basis that Triple C have grown, and we don't know grown from what. How big is it compared to the MDC that went before it? We don't know. But to base that as the basis for going into an election is unbelievable. He goes on our agenda. Recently, I laid out the Zimbabwe agenda for what a citizens' government will do when the voters and citizens accord us a clear and clean mandate. This agenda was not crafted by a few elite in the boardroom. It came from listening to citizens and their wishes for a better Zimbabwe. Our agenda for a new great Zimbabwe comes from the working people who are struggling to feed their families and students who are worried about their future. It is about the mothers giving birth in hospitals without lights or basic medicines, and the farmers who are not being paid enough for their hard work. The agenda you should be presenting, Mr. Chamisa, is how are we moving from where we are now? We are stuck where we are because we failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections. As long as ZANU-PF is able to rig the elections, all your economic policies to address the working people and so forth will come to nothing. It is not about the economic policies. That is precisely the point. As long as ZANU-PF is able to rig the election, it can claim legitimacy and will continue in government. Our citizen change volunteer program is recruiting new voters for change, he claims at one point. Again, we've gone through this before. One of the strategies that Triple C had always claimed was that it was going to, as part of its winning this rigged election, it was going to have mass voter registration. And then it will be followed by mass voting, and then will protect the vote. This claim has already proven to be an empty claim. MDC since 2018 has only managed, or rather, ZEC has announced as of 30th of May 2022 that it had only registered 250,000 new voters. Even if we ascribe all of them to Triple C, that is only 4% of their own target of registering 6 million. So here we are again, we are being told that we've recruited new voters. And yet the figures on the ground is telling a totally different story. He goes on to talk about our new democratic community consensus candidate selection. This is for the coming elections. Is structured from the ground up because our citizens and community know their leaders. It pivots from the philosophy and principle that places the citizen at the center first. This is just empty rhetoric that absolutely has no relevance whatsoever. The challenge is before the nation is to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. And yet we are wasting time on the selection process, which is not even democratic. This consensus, what consensus? How do you reach that consensus if it's not going to allow each individual to have a meaningful vote? But it clearly shows the Triple C are determined to participate in these elections. And they're only coming up with feeble excuses why they're participating. They can't even have a democratic process of electing their candidates. Instead, coming up with all manner of uh, they're rigging their own primary elections. Our push for electoral reforms. This is the crux of the matter. Electoral reforms leading to free, fair, and credible elections. So, what is Triple C's push for electoral reforms? I read. What are we doing to push for electoral reforms? We asked. Through our representative in Parliament, we have crafted an electoral amendment bill, which is now before Parliament. This bill carries our demands for electoral reforms, respect for the right to vote, include the implementation of the diaspora vote, accessible voters registration, a credible voters roll, the security of polling material, etc., etc. Now, this is again totally meaningless. The election is likely to be carried out in August. We are in March. And as soon as President Mnangagwa has announced the date, Parliament will be dissolved. So we are looking at April, May, June, July, 4 months. Does he seriously expect this electoral amendment bill to be passed in 4 months? It has got to be passed and all these things implemented in the next 4 months. This is something that they failed to do when they were in the GNU to start with, when they didn't have to ask ZANU-PF to implement these reforms. They were part of government. They could have submitted the reform proposals on how to reform ZEC, the police, so that they are more independent. They did not. And now they are submitting an electoral amendment bill in parliament in which the minority, ZANU-PF, has got the two-thirds majority, and they've got 4 months to implement it. And we are supposed to believe that this amendment bill will sail through and triple six demands for the respect of the right to vote, including implementation of the diaspora vote, etc., will all be honored. How is the diaspora vote going to be honored? Have the people in the diaspora be registered to vote in 4 months? 3 million of them, and be added to the voters' roll? This is just totally nonsensical. This is a party that cannot be taken seriously. I can go on and on this 3-page statement that Chamisa submitted. All of it is absolutely nothing of substance. Nothing. In one part of it, in my message to all, he's asking the traditional leaders something. To the traditional leaders, he writes, you are the custodian of our culture. You belong to all people. You have the authority to refuse any order, to commandeer your subjects. In our new Zimbabwe, we all support and honor you and protect you from political abuse. He's referring to what ZANU-PF is doing. Only the other day, ZANU-PF gave 20 new vehicles to the chiefs. This is part and parcel of ZANU-PF buying off traditional leaders, so that they've now become ZANU-PF political commissar in all but name. And he has failed to implement the democratic reforms, which would have meant that such things like that would not happen. And now he's appealing to them, and hopefully that they will listen. This is really absolutely ridiculous. Here is a party that is determined to participate in these elections, regardless of how flawed the process is, and is determined to convince us that they will win big, just to hide the fact that they are participating out of greed. In another section, he calls on SADC to SADC region, all we ask for you is that you defend the principle governing free, fair, and credible elections to all nations in the region. SADC in the past, to be fair to them, are the ones who actually drafted the 2008 Global Political Agreement that led to the GNU. And through all the GNU, SADC leaders tried to nag Chamisa and his fellow MDC friends who were in the GNU to implement the democratic reforms, but they were ignored. As a last minute desperate measure, SADC told Morgan Tsvangirai in uh, June 2013 that they should not participate in the coming elections without implementing reforms. And again, they were ignored. So now Chamisa is going to SADC and appealing to them to defend principles governing free and fair and credible elections, when SADC itself told them that you should not participate without meaningful reforms. And they are the ones who are insisting on participating without reforms. The country, Zimbabwe, has got to make a decision here. Clearly, we have got an opposition party that is participating in these elections, not because they're not aware that uh, the elections are going to be rigged. They're aware of it. They're also aware of the fact that by participating, they're only giving ZANU-PF legitimacy. They're aware of it. They also know the ZANU-PF is giving away a few seats as bait to entice the opposition to participate. ZANU-PF needs the opposition to participate to give the process some modicum of credibility. And in this case, the excuse SADC needs to grant ZANU-PF legitimacy. We have got to break this cycle. We have got to reject this nonsense from Triple C. We cannot afford to have another rigged election, my fellow Zimbabweans. That is at the heart of the argument here. Triple C is not going to win big. It's just going to participate, win those few seats that will confirm Chamisa as the leader of the country's opposition party, gives ZANU-PF legitimacy as the new government, and will be stuck with ZANU-PF for another 5 more years. This is the price we will have to pay for participating in these elections. We can reject this election process for what they are and reject them now. There is not going to be a new great Zimbabwe without us doing the hard work that it takes. And the hard work entails implementing the democratic reforms to make sure that elections are free, fair, and credible. That is fundamental. We have got the opposition that has given up on reforms. And we have got to stand up and saying, okay, we need reforms. This opposition has lost credibility. It no longer represents the ordinary people of Zimbabwe. That is the truth. Chamisa and friends are hunting with the hounds and running with the hare. This insanity must be stopped. There is not going to be any new great Zimbabwe without doing the hard work of implementing the democratic reforms to make sure that there are free, fair, and credible elections. That is the message I would like to leave to you all tonight. Thank you. Thank you very much, and good night.